Hello, my name is Mark O'Grady and this is a video for the Xero XDHAX Hackathon. So I've created an open source project. It's an integration between Xero and Alexa using AspnetCore. I'll link to the GitHub repo, but let's take a look at what it does. So here's Alexa. Alexa, ask Alexero what is my invoice status.
You have 10 invoices that have been paid. You have 2 invoices with a balance to pay of 4,340.00.
Okay. Okay, so that's Alexa. Now let's take a look at how I created it. Okay, let's start a project. So we're in Visual Studio. I'm just going to start a new MVC core application. So I'm going to call it Xero Alexa Hack, and I'm going to click OK. So that's now going to bring up this screen. So I'm going to do a model view controller. I'm not going to bother with authentication. This is just a hack, so we're doing everything as quickly as possible. So I'm going to click OK. Okay, so here's our project. So we're going to right click on controllers. We're just going to add a new controller. New item. And we're going to select a controller. So we're just going to do a basic MVC controller and we'll call it Alexa. Okay, so we've got our basic controller here. We're going to come back to this, but first off, all we need to do is do a quick publish, and then we're going to go onto the Alexa site to set up the skill. So I'm just going to publish it to Azure App Services. So I'm going to hit Create, New, Publish. So I'm going to leave all the defaults there. So it's just going to set me up a website, and we'll see what that does in a moment. So I'm going to hit create. And so now we have our site. Now the really nice thing about the Windows Azure App Service is that straight away it gives us a HTTPS endpoint. And we'll see why that's relevant in a minute, but what we'll do is we'll copy that. So we'll go to the developer.amazon.com site, and if we click on Alexa, and then we click Alexa Skill Kit here, and then we'll hit Start a New Skill. So we're just going to leave the custom interactive model that you can link into their home skills, etc. But we just want to keep it quite simple, and we're going to call this Xero Hack, and the invocation name. Now I have tried different names in the past, and sometimes I've had problems, it hasn't quite picked, so we're going to try and pick something quite simple and just Xero Hack, and we spelled that obviously zero. We're not going to bother with any of those bits there. Next off, we've saved that, so we're going to hit next. Next off, we've got the interactive model. Now they've got this new skill builder, which I personally prefer, just because you're not having to copy and paste things about. So we'll just keep this simple, and obviously this is what they're going to be using in the future. So we're going to start off and just put invoice status. So that's going to be one of our intents, and we'll see what intents are a bit later. Then we need utterances. So what are my invoice status? So what this is going to do is when we utter these things to Alexa, this is actually going to send us a notification to say this was an invoice status intent. We'll see what that means. How are my invoices? What is my status with invoices? So it can be many different things there, and we can just put invoice status, so it can probably just pick that out. So we're going to save that, then we're going to add another one, and we're going to call this one risk, and we can say what are my risks. Do I have any risks? And we'll just put the word risks in there as well. So we're going to save that as well. And what we need to do is hit build. So that's going to build that. So now we're going to go into configuration. So hopefully that's done. I'm just going to refresh this. So we have our HTTPS endpoint, and earlier when we were creating a Alexa controller, we've got the word Alexa there. So when we come back, we can do an HTTPS endpoint. We can put that in, and then the word Alexa. Now we're going to say we're not bothered about regional endpoints and account linking, etc. But what we could do, this is just a hack, so we're going to go through this as sort of quickly as possible, but you could link it to a specific Xero account, but we're going to do it just hard-coded. So we're going to hit next on this. So it says the information is out of date. We're going to hit enter again. And this happens sometimes with this portal. So again, we're going to hit HTTPS, enter our details there, which are Alexa. Hit no on that, save that. Okay, that's fine now. So because we're using Azure and it gives us that endpoint, it's obviously a subdomain here of azurewebsites.net, so we're going to check the second one, but it may be that you've got your own trusted certificate or you'll upload one there, so we'll just hit next. And now once we've entered all that detail, all those details, we're able to test. So if we're to put something in, this is going to fail. We can see here that there was an error calling this endpoint. So, but this is the request we will receive to our controller. So this is the data we're going to take. So the really nice thing with Visual Studio is we can create a folder here, an Alexa request, and we can copy that and then hit edit, paste special, and we can paste that JSON as classes. And what that's done is that's created everything for us here. We just need to rename the root object to be Alexa request. Now I know what the response is going to be, so I'm just going to paste that in as well. Okay, so we can see here that I've got my Alexa request and response, and there's certain bits within here where I've created a constructor and just initialized some objects. So then we've got to come through here, so we're going to get it's going to be a HTTP post, so we need to put that above the as an attribute, and we're going to get from body, and it's going to be an Alexa request. So this is what we're going to be getting from Alexa. And then we're going to return some JSON. So we're going to return a JSON request, and that's going to be one of the models that we saw earlier. So I'm just going to actually here, I'm going to create a service. So let's just add a new folder. Now I'm going to be really hacky here. Usually I'd use interfaces, etc., but I'm just going to create a Xero hack service. So what this is going to do is just going to return the objects with the correct responses. So I'm going to have one that returns, so let's put, it's going to be an Alexa response. I'm going to say get invoice status. And I'm going to put return response. And I'm going to have the same thing but get risk. Now I'm just going to quickly populate all the data within these. So I've put in a few bits here. Sorry, I just need to change a couple of bits. But essentially we've got a response that we're going to send. Now you've got these cards which you'll see within their app, which are text little bits that come up. We've got output speech. This is what's going to be responding. So we're going to see here that we're going to respond, you have a great invoice status. You've got plain text, and you've got another type, which is their type, which you can find in different places, but it'll be a different response that you send over that's in their format. And then there's a reprompt at the end to say, can I help you with anything else? Now, if you want the session to end, we'll just put false in here for the moment. But if you want the session to end, so next time you speak to Alexa, it starts over again, and doesn't reprompt you. But we're just going to leave it like that. So that's going to be get invoice status. So if we now go to the controller, and we're just going to say in here, this is again a bit hacky, but we're just doing it for the moment, XDHAX service, and then say dot get invoice status. So we're going to save that, and again we're going to come back. So if we right click within here and hit publish again, it'll bring us this up, and we can just hit publish again. So now the site's back up. We're going to come in here and we can ask a test, and hopefully we can see a response saying great invoice status. So at the moment it's not really giving us an intent request, it's just giving us risk here as an intent. So what we'll do this time is we're just going to split out the two calls, and we're going to return an object. So let's go back into our app. We're just going to go in here, and we're going to put a switch statement in here to say request dot intent, and then we're going to use the case, and we've got one called risk. So if we go back into the Alexa bits here, we can go to the interactive model, and we've got one called invoice status and one called risk. So let's get invoice status. So just put a break in there. Status. Break in there. So now we could just grab this. Name there, and we're just going to pass this one out that says get risk, and then when we're happy with that, so this time when it comes in, as we'll see in a moment, it will actually tell us which one it is, which intent it is. So now we're going to come back into here, into XeroHack, in the testing simulator bit, and we're just going to put the word invoice status. So we're to utter this to Alexa, which we'll see in a bit. We'll get, this is the request that was sent in, and we can see here the type of intent here was invoice status, so that correlates to that bit there, request.intent name. And then we can say you've got great invoice status. Likewise, if we put risk in here and hit ask, it says you have a risk. So we can see that working now, and that's okay. So what we need to do now is to hook this up to Xero. So I'm going to come to developer.xero.com, and I'm just going to click on my apps. And we can hear Tax Optimizer, which I've also entered into the Xero Hackathon, but I'm going to hit add application here, and we're just going to say private use within my organization. So we're going to put application name Xero Alexa, and then I need to set up my certificate, etc. So I'm just going to do that now. So that's now all been set up. So now we need to set up Xero in our application. So now let's go back to the app. So I've refactored this and I've added a few things in to save time. So one thing you'll need to do is first off add the Xero dependency. If you go to right click on dependencies and manage NuGet, I'm using ASP.NET Core if we type in Xero, which means I need to use Xero.NET Standard because it uses the standard.NET. If you're just using .NET Framework, as usual, it's just Xero.api.sdk, either minimal or full SDK. So what have I done to improve this? First off, I've got a try and I just return an error if there's any errors. But if we go into here, I've got a service called Xero Service, and that's got something called getRisk here. So first of all, I create an API object, and then I run getRisks, and I return from there a string, and I add that string into the content. So in this Alexa response, the content is the detail that's going to be displayed on either the card or it's going to be returned as in text from Alexa. So what am I doing in the getRisks? So for getRisks, I've just thought, okay, well, tell me what's overdue by 60 days and how many invoices are outstanding and what's the balance. So here I start the API. So I've got this get API, which basically runs a Xero.core constructor there. And so first off, I say there's no risks identified. Then I get all the invoices. So just using the API, get all the invoices, return them back, find the amount due greater than 0, and due date greater than this. There's not too many invoices, so I thought it's okay just to get them all. But I could put a query in there to maybe be a bit more efficient. But as there's not many, I respond and then I replace the string out here to say you've got however many outstanding invoices and an outstanding balance of da-da-da. Above we can see the get invoices request. So if I was asking for the invoice status, I get the amount of paid invoices, I get the amount that's outstanding, again the amount that's due and the amount that's there, and I put that into a string. So we can see it's dead simple stuff. This could be extended greatly, but at the moment we're just doing as simple as possible just for the hackathon. So that's all I needed. Then I can simply right click on here, publish, hit publish, and then it goes out onto the web. So now let's take a look at it working in action. Alexa, ask Alexero, what is my invoice status?
You have 10 invoices that have been paid. You have 2 invoices with a balance to pay of 4,340.00.